Good evening, America. This is Katie. I wasn't going to hop on today. It's Sunday. We've had enough news. But it's just a lot of American news today. Um, this is the only news show where Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Socialists, Libertarians, and that one cousin who gets all his political information from Facebook can come together and be equally irritated with me. Tonight, um, America is in a trade war with China. No. I misspoke. I misspoke. America is in a trade war with Canada. Canada, not China, not Russia. Canada. The country that gave us maple syrup, Celine Dion, Ryan Reynolds, and approximately 73% of the people you thought were American. Uh, we looked north and said, you know what? I've had enough of your universal health care and suspiciously polite behavior. Meanwhile, massive wildfire is threatening Reno. Politicians spent years telling us artificial intelligence is the future, have discovered the future requires a whole lot of electricity. Um, Scientists are making major progress on a personalized mRNA cancer treatment. The federal government is trying to decide whether AI belongs in your child's classroom, and Washington has had an actual automobile race, which means for one glorious afternoon, something in Washington moved quickly, passed successfully, and finished on time. None of the participants were members of Congress. Ba-dum-ching. But first, a little housekeeping. This is Ain't America Great Again. The question mark is important because I'm not here to tell you America is terrible. I'm not here to tell you America is perfect. I'm here to ask, what the hell are we doing? Sometimes the answer is something brilliant. Sometimes it's something complicated. And sometimes it's America is putting a 50% tariff on hockey equipment. And unlike a lot of political media, I don't have a team I'm required to defend. If Trump does something sensible, we're going to say so. If Trump does something ridiculous, we're going to say that too. Same for Democrats, same for Republicans, same for corporations, same for universities, same for Canada. Although I don't anticipate having to investigate Canada very often. Their national scandals are probably like, minister failed to apologize after bumping into a pedestrian. Ba-dum-ching. And one more rule. We're going to separate facts from opinions. Because everyone gets an opinion, but do you get your own arithmetic? So grab your drink. Mine should probably be water. It's actually cold brew coffee. And let's do the news. Segment 1. Oh, Canada. Okay. America and Canada are officially fighting. Not with tanks, not with missiles, with tariffs. Which is basically how accountants conduct warfare. The United States has imposed a 50% tariff on about $20 billion worth of Canadian goods after trade negotiations collapsed. Canada says it will respond with a dollar for dollar retaliation beginning September 8th, according to AP News. And before anybody starts yelling, no, this does not mean everything Canada sends to the United States will suddenly have a 50% tariff. We're talking about targeted goods worth roughly $20 billion. That distinction matters because social media loves talking 50% tariffs on certain Canadian products and it turning into Trump putting a 50% tax on Canada. No, that isn't what happened. And while we're here, let's talk about something politicians from both parties have historically been very creative about explaining. Who pays a tariff? Because you'll hear politicians saying, we're making another country pay. And that's not how customs works. When an affected Canadian product enters the United States, the tariff is collected from the U.S. importer. The Canadian government does not walk up to the border with a check. There isn't a little Canadian man standing there saying, sorry about that, here's the tariff. The American importer pays. Who ultimately bears the cost? Maybe the importer absorbs some of it. Maybe the Canadian producer lowers his price. Maybe the importer switches suppliers. Maybe the consumer pays more. Usually some combination happens depending on the product. Competition, contracts, exchange rates, and whatever alternatives exist. That is the adult answer, which is inconvenient because it depends on market conditions, doesn't fit very well on a campaign hat. Tariffs aren't inherently stupid. I want to make that clear. Governments use tariffs for reasons. You might want to protect a strategically important domestic industry. You might want to counter another country's trade barriers. You might want to negotiate leverage. You might decide national security is more important than obtaining the absolute cheapest product available. Those are legitimate policy arguments. But tariffs aren't free money either. If they were, economists would have solved taxation centuries ago. We'd all be sitting here paying zero income tax while foreigners somehow funded the government through imported cheese. Now, the Trump argument is essentially Canada has maintained unfair barriers, particularly in certain sectors, and America should use its enormous market power to force a better arrangement. Canada walked away, and now we have tariffs. One particularly interesting development today came from former Vice President Mike Pence. Pence said that the last thing America needs while families are worried about affordability is a trade war with Canada. He urged negotiation rather than confrontation, according to the Washington Post. And this is why I love stories that break the usual political script. Because this isn't Republican versus Democrat. This is Republican versus Republican. Trump represents the newer economic nationalist strain of the Republican Party: tariffs, industrial policy, trade leverage, domestic manufacturing. Pence is making the older Republican case: free trade, lower barriers, open markets. That's real ideological disagreement. You can actually learn something from it, which is way more interesting than watching two people on cable yell socialist, fascist, socialist, fascist, and then Anderson Cooper goes, we'll have to leave it there. No, don't leave it there. They didn't explain anything. So here's the question I want An America Great viewers asking. What outcome are we trying to achieve, and what will it cost to get there? If these tariffs result in Canada making meaningful concessions that benefit American workers, supporters will say that the pressure worked. If Canada refuses, retaliates, businesses pay more, and consumers get higher prices without significant concessions, critics will say the strategy failed. We don't know the ending yet. That's the thing about the news. Sometimes you have to say, we don't know yet. And I know. Terrifying. Canada says its retaliation starts on September 8th. So now American exporters may face Canadian tariffs, which means American businesses can get squeezed too. Congratulations. Everyone gets tariffs. You get a tariff. You get a tariff. You get a tariff. Everyone look under your seat. And let's acknowledge something else. The United States and Canada have one of the most integrated trading relationships on earth. We don't just sell each other finished products. Supply chains cross the borders. A part can be made in Canada, incorporated into something in America, and sold somewhere else. So when politicians talk about imports like their boxes arriving from completely unrelated planet, reality is messier, which brings us to the biggest danger in trade policy. The slogan is also always simpler than the supply chain. America first. Fine. Which American company? Which American worker? Which American consumer? Which American farmer? Because those interests don't always align. An American manufacturer competing against Canadian imports might love the tariff. An American manufacturing using Canadian inputs might hate it. An American consumer might just wondering why the thing at the grocery store costs more. All three people are Americans. Policy creates winners and losers. Our job isn't to cheat. And our job isn't to chant. Our job is to figure out who is who. And for God's sake, Canada, can we just fix this before hockey season? Because America has many strengths. But if we get into an actual hockey-based conflict with Canada, we are not prepared. They've been training since birth.